Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're jumping right into some, well, really profound stuff. God's nature, human free will, the whole reason for creation itself.
Yeah, deep topics for sure.
We've been looking at some fascinating material, and our goal, for you listening, is to make these complex ideas as clear as possible. Maybe even, challenge a few assumptions along the way.
Exactly. We want clarity. We'll look at terms like omniscient, all-knowing, and omnipotent, all-powerful. What do they really mean?
And how does that connect to the Bible's bigger picture?
Precisely. Accurate understanding, that's the focus.
Yeah.
Getting past maybe some common misunderstandings.
Okay, let's unpack this first big one then. Omniscience and omnipotence. Knowing everything, being all-powerful.
Right.
It often leads straight to questions about predestination, doesn't it? Like, if God knows what I'm going to have for breakfast tomorrow, did I really choose it? Or was it set in stone? Does my free will even count?
That's the common hurdle. From our human perspective, our sort of creaturely view.
Creaturely perspective. Yeah, I like that term.
It feels logical, right? If he knows everything, the future included, then surely everything's fixed.
Makes our choices feel a bit like an illusion.
It can, yeah. Like we're just actors reading lines. He already wrote.
So how do we think about this differently? The material we looked at had a great analogy about a dog.
Ah, yes. The dog analogy. It's helpful. Imagine you create something, like you design and build a dog.
Okay, my own dog.
You, as the creator, can give that dog freedom. But, and this is key, it's freedom within a certain capacity, a boundary you define.
So, not unlimited freedom.
No, but genuine freedom within those limits. You, the creator, know all the potential choices the dog could make within that capacity you gave it.
Like maybe it can choose between playing fetch, taking a nap, or barking at the mailman, options A, B, or C.
Exactly. You know A, B, and C are possible because you designed its capacity that way.
But the dog still actually chooses one.
Yes. The dog freely picks A or B or C. Your knowledge of the possibilities doesn't force the dog's paw, so to speak.
Ah, okay. You just define the scope of its freedom.
Precisely. You set the parameters, but the choice within those parameters is real.
That distinction is huge. So applying that back to us, our free will isn't limitless chaos.
Right.
It's a real gift, but given within our capacity, the boundaries God set.
Which allows for genuine, authentic choice within that realm he established.
So our decisions are our own, even if God, the creator, knows the full range of possibilities he gave us. We're not just puppets.
For it all, we're making real choices.
Okay, this is where it got really interesting for me. If free will isn't just about picking A, B, or C, what's its ultimate point?
The deeper purpose.
And the material points to something profound. It's about enabling a unique relationship with God.
Yes, a relationship where we become a distinct object of his affection, able to respond to his love.
Wow, okay. Explain that more. How does free will enable that specific kind of relationship?
There's another analogy for this one, the bottle and the water.
Right, the bottle.
Imagine a closed bottle that's like our individual existence, our unique self.
Okay.
And it's immersed in this vast ocean of water that represents God's omnipresence. He's everywhere.
So the bottle is in the water.
Right, but the water isn't inside the bottle. Not yet.
Because the lid's on.
Exactly. Now, opening that lid, that's our free choice. It's an act of choosing to receive.
Okay.
When the lid is open, the water fills the bottle.
Ah.
The bottle becomes united with the water. It's filled by it. But note at the bottle itself, its form, its identity, it remains.
It doesn't dissolve?
No, it keeps its distinct existence, but now it's filled, united, one with the water.
So that's how we can be filled with God's Spirit, become one with Him.
While still being us.
Yeah.
Maintaining our unique identity. It's oneness, not absorption or dissolution.
That makes so much sense then, why the Bible calls us God's sons or children, not just, creations or things.
It implies that deeper intimacy, that potential for relationship.
And this connects to specific verses, right? I remember reading about abiding in love.
Absolutely. Think about John chapter 15, starting around verse 9. Jesus says, "As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love."
Abide in His love.
And he links it to keeping commandments, which shows it's an active relationship. Then he says, "That my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full." It's about being filled.
And wasn't there another one about being in each other?
Yes, John chapter 14, verse 20. Jesus looks ahead and says, "In that day you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you."
Wow. Mutual indwelling.
That's the ultimate goal of that free choice, choosing to open the bottle to enter that relationship of oneness.
Okay, so connecting this out, the bigger picture, why did God create anything at all?
If we follow this line of thought, the source material is really clear. It's fundamentally about love.
Creation itself is evidence of his love.
Yes, it's the stage, the environment, designed specifically to foster this kind of relationship.
And the very foundation, the blueprint of creation.
Yeah.
It's God's own character, his nature.
Exactly, his inherent nature, his
Yeah.
gumsung character nature. That's the basis for all order, all physical laws, all moral principles. It's not arbitrary.
So the universe isn't just random stuff happening, it reflects who God is.
Perfectly put. And the Bible backs this up strongly. Romans chapter 11, verse 36.
Okay, Romans 11.36.
For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be the glory forever. Everything comes from him, is sustained through his principles, and heads back toward him.
Yet he remains unchanged.
Unchanged. And think about Isaiah chapter 45, verse 18.
Isaiah 45.18.
It says, God created the heavens, formed the earth. He established it. He did not create it a chaos. He formed it to be inhabited.
He did not create it a chaos. That's powerful.
It highlights that inherent order, that purpose rooted in his character. It's all structured according to who he is and his loving intent.
So the laws of nature, moral laws, they're not just rules he made up.
No, they're reflections of his own character. Like gravity reflects his consistency, maybe. Love reflects his core nature.
Which means deviating from that character, from those principles.
It creates disharmony. It goes against the grain of reality itself. It could even, the material suggests, lead to a loss of true existence because you're moving away from the source and foundation of all being.
Like trying to run a machine against its design specs. It breaks down.
That's a good way to think about it. And this brings us to a really common misunderstanding.
Which is?
The idea that God's commandments, like the moral law, were somehow abolished at the cross.
Oh, right. You hear that sometimes.
But if the commandments, like love one another, are direct expressions of God's unchanging character, which is love.
Then how could they be abolished?
Exactly. It's illogical. Abolishing the commandments would be like trying to abolish God's own nature or abolishing the foundations of reality. It doesn't track.
Okay. That reframes things quite a bit.
It does. And what's fascinating is how God sets up this possibility for a relationship. It involves a kind of self-limitation on his part.
Self-limitation. How so?
He sort of extracts himself, you could say, limits his direct moment-by-moment control over our choices.
Right. He steps back to give us space to choose freely.
Yes. This space is crucial for a true, loving relationship. It's different from how, say, an animal relates to us.
How do you mean?
An animal can have a life relationship, instinct, dependence, affection even, but not really a faith relationship.
Because they don't have that conscious free choice based on belief and trust.
Precisely. That capacity seems unique to beings made in his image. So God isn't pulling strings.
He's inviting a response.
Exactly. And this free will, its primary purpose isn't just random choosing. It's specifically given to enable faith, medium faith.
Faith, trust, belief, choosing to open the bottle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Choosing to align our existence with his, to be united while remaining distinct.
And Jesus' role in all this is central.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah.
He dealt with the sin problem, the disconnect caused by deviating from God's character.
And answered the questions raised by death itself.
Yes. And his ascension, then sending the Holy Spirit, the other comforter, Jesus promised.
That was the mechanism for filling the bottle.
That was the essential next step. The Spirit enables that indwelling, that unity we talked about.
And then empowered by the Spirit.
We can then help others receive the Spirit, fulfilling the command to make disciples.
Go and share what you've received.
It's a remarkably, rational way for God to work. Indirectly, through us, respecting our agency. A multiplication effect.
Okay, but this loops back to a tough question for many listeners, I think. If God knows everything, if he has this plan, does he cause bad things to happen? Is he responsible for evil?
It's crucial to be clear here. The sources emphasize God does not cause evil.
Like Cain killing Abel, Genesis chapter 4, verse 8.
He didn't make Cain do that. Or Pharaoh's stubbornness back in Exodus chapter 7 through 10. God didn't force Pharaoh's heart to be hard in the first instance.
What's happening there?
Because God gave free will, and he knows all the potential choices within those boundaries he set.
He can see what choices people will make.
Yes. He can foresee how even negative choices, freely made by creatures, will ultimately fit into his larger overarching purpose.
The Romans 8.28 idea, all things working together for good.
That principle seems deeply connected, yes. His sovereignty works with our free will, guiding the ultimate outcome without violating the choices themselves. He knows the result without authoring the sin.
Okay. So if God's plan is so good, why all the conflict? Why the struggle? The material talks about a great controversy.
Right, and it really drills down into the core argument of Satan.
What's his fundamental claim, according to this?
Essentially, he denies that defined boundary of free will.
The limits God set.
Yes. He argues, basically, if God is all-knowing and all-powerful, then he must be responsible for sin and evil. It's ultimately his fault.
Shifting the blame.
Entirely. And deeper down, his motivation is rejecting the whole idea of needing to be filled by God, of opening his bottle.
He wants his existence to be purely his own, self-sufficient.
Yes. Claiming his existence as his own, seeking self-glory, arguing he doesn't need God's spirit. It's a rejection of dependence, a rejection of that relationship model.
And his view tries to flatten everything out, equalize existence.
It seems so. Denying unique roles, unique responsibilities, trying to make it all seem arbitrary, like a game of chance.
Which contradicts God's purposeful, ordered creation.
Absolutely. God's plan isn't a game where you just hit reset if things go wrong.
Yeah.
He works within the choices made. He doesn't just scrap everything and start over.
So the whole cosmic conflict really boils down to the nature of existence itself.
Pretty much. Who owns it? Who is responsible for it? Is it God who grants limited freedom? Or the creature who insists on absolute autonomy?
It's about the definition of being created yet free.
That seems to be the heart of the dispute.
Wow. Okay, so bringing this towards a close. How should all this affect how we see God working in our lives, in history? There was a key distinction from the Psalms.
Yes, incredibly insightful. Psalm chapter 103, verse 7.
Psalm 103.7.
He made known his ways to Moses, his acts to the people of Israel.
Ways versus acts. What's the difference?
His ways. Who, Hangwi? That refers to how God operates. His character, his principles, his methods, the underlying logic.
That's what Moses understood.
Apparently so.
Right.
He grasped God's consistent character, his ways, which is why he could remain steadfast even when things looked bleak or the people complained. He saw the pattern.
Okay. And his acts.
His acts, hangsa, those are the immediate, visible results, the miracles, the interventions, the deeds.
They're parting the Red Sea, the manna.
Exactly. The Israelites often focused only on those acts. So when the next big miracle didn't happen right away, or they faced a new challenge,
They forgot the previous acts and lost faith.
they wavered, yeah. Because their focus was on the spectacular deed, not the unchanging character and reliable ways behind the deeds.
That's extremely relevant for us today, isn't it?
I think so.
We often look for the big acts, the signs and wonders, a dramatic healing, a sudden solution. We pray for the act.
We want the visible deed.
But maybe Jesus, maybe God, is asking us to look deeper, to see his works, his ways, his consistent character and action, even when it's not flashy.
That seems to be the implication. Understanding the ways gives you peace, even when the acts aren't immediately obvious.
Because you trust the character, the method.
Exactly. Seeing God's ways lets you perceive the bigger eternal plan, like seeing all those diagrams overlapping, as the source material puts it.
From God's perspective.
Yes. It helps you see how even difficulties, even the negative consequences of others' free choices, can ultimately fit into that larger good, that Romans 8.28 reality.
Without God violating anyone's will.
Right. It's his consistent character and principles guiding the overarching narrative, bringing order even out of apparent chaos.
Okay. So, wrapping up this deep dive, the core understanding seems to be God's all-knowing nature works with, not against, our genuine free will.
Within defined limits, yes.
And the purpose of that freedom isn't randomness, but fostering this incredibly deep, loving relationship, being filled with his spirit while remaining uniquely ourselves.
The bottle in the water.
And creation itself. It's an expression of his unchanging character, which is love. The very laws and order reflect him.
That's a great summary.
So, for you listening, here's something to really chew on.
Yeah, final thought. Considering God's unchanging character, his ways is the bedrock of everything, and his patient work through free will to draw us into faith.
How might that shift how you see challenges in your life?
Instead of just searching for the next miracle, the next act, how can you start looking for his ways?
His consistent principles, his character, playing out in your journey even when it's tough.
How can understanding his unchanging nature and his deliberate method of working with our choices bring you maybe a deeper sense of peace a greater sense of purpose, even amidst the uncertainties.
Something profound to think about.